Good morning. Welcome to our midweek Bible study. We've been having a lot of fun in person, and so we're glad to bring you, whoever are watching, in on the fun. So we're all on the same page, quite literally. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 9, ninth chapter of 1 Samuel, and we're going to begin our time together with a word of prayer. Let's pray. God our Father, we offer our praise to you this morning, first and foremost for the glory you shine down on us, for your gracious daily provision, for all the many blessings that we have. We thank you. We thank you that we, with boldness, can come before you with our needs as well as our praises and lift them unto you. We thank you that you hear us when we cry out. I ask that you bless this time that we spend in your word, that we could draw from the very marrow of your word things that we can apply to our life, this better understanding of your character and who you are and how you relate to us. Anoint this time and anoint those who gather around your word to study it. For all this we ask in your name. Amen. So we pick back up with the story of, spoiler alert, Samuel. In 1 Samuel, we hear more about what is going on in his life and what has transpired with this guy named Saul. We have we're going to meet this person named Saul. Prior to this, Israel cried out for a king, and God said, I will give you a king when, in the infinite knowledge that I have as God, will grant you a king as my people. They said, no, we want a king now. In our times dealing with kids, if you've been a teacher, if you've had children, you've no doubt had the moment where I am a good caretaker. I am a good parent. I intend to feed you in the future. Now, the child says, "But I'm hungry now. I'm starving. You are starving me. No, I will feed you, and this time will be 5 o'clock, and it's 3 o'clock. You just practically ate. I will waste away to nothing if I don't get food now." And so I hate to lay out Israel as an impetulant child, but it would seem that God said, if you so wish to receive a king when it is not time for you to receive a king, understand that there will be repercussions because of this. That the king that you will be given is not the king that you want. You want a king because all the other countries have a king. We want to be like all the little boys and girls in the playground. And again, I'm the people of Israel as impetulant children. I don't want to be unsavory or rude, but I work better with analogy and story, and that's how I see them. God had a plan. I'm going to give you a king, and it's going to be a king that's going to be after my own heart, as the word recalls David. And so that's where we find ourselves, following up that cry and of we want a king, and Samuel warning them of what practically would happen when the king they've asked for comes about. Beginning at chapter 9. There was a Benjamite, a man of standing, whose name was Kish, son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Becherath, the son of Aphiah of Benjamin. We have a Toledo, which is a Hebrew genealogy. The idea of who's related to who is very important in this time, for the practical sense of, okay, I know this person. You're so and so's uncle. I understand that. So there's the practical sense, but also, as far as, especially in the people of Israel, who you were related to, whose tribe you were a part of, was very much a part of an understanding of who you were and where your place in society was. And so we know that we're dealing with a Benjamite here, of the tribe of Benjamin, a tribe I'm sort of partial to as my given name. He had a son, this Benjamite, had a son named Saul, an impressive young man without equal among the Israelites, a head taller than any of the others. Now the donkeys belonging to Saul's father Kish were lost. And Kish said to his son Saul, "Take one of the servants with you, and go and look for the donkeys." So he passed through the hill country of Ephraim, and through the area around Shal-Ishah, but they didn't find them. No donkeys there. They went on to the district of Shalim, but the donkeys were not there. Then he passed through the territory of Benjamin, but they did not find them. He's looked all over the place to try to find these donkeys. Sometimes we can relate to that. We let our dog or our cat out, or heavens to Betsy, our children, and where have they gone? We call Susie. Susie, is she with you? No, she's not with me. And so Saul is looking everywhere for his father's donkeys and is coming up empty-handed. Verse 5. When they reached the district of Zuph, Saul, mercy, we're going New Testament there. Saul said to his servant who was with him, "Come, let's go back, or my father will stop thinking about the donkeys and start worrying about us." But the servant replied, "Look, in this town there was a man of God. He is highly respected, and everything he says comes true. Let's go there now. Perhaps he will tell us what we are to take, where we are to take." When I read through this and I kind of look at the commentary, what sticks out to me at this moment, Saul is of the area. He's one that's well respected. I'm sure he knows people, knows things. He's not a knucklehead. And they get to the district of Zuph, which is the let's say, for our understanding, the county that Ramah is located in. Ramah is where Samuel is. Saul doesn't know about Samuel. We don't have this recognition, this realization that Samuel is there. Saul, who will be anointed king, if that spoils it, I apologize if we've not read this, but he has no concept of who Samuel is. Samuel, who we've seen is this young man of great promise, who serves God dutifully, who prophesies, but Saul doesn't know him. It's the servant who goes, "There's a man of God here," and so they approach even coming to Samuel, not, "Hey, let's beseech the Lord because the Lord cares for us to find our donkeys." They see it as they see it as a chance to just go find this mystic person who can plumb the depths of the ethereal world and find it. It's not a very holy presence. This guy can talk to the sky man and look for our donkeys. It seems, in this perspective, very irreverent way to go about things. Verse 7. Saul said to his servant, "If we go, what can we give the man? The food in our sacks is gone. We have no gift to take to the man of God. What do we have?" The servant answered him, "Look, I have a quarter of a shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God, so that he will tell us what to take." Formerly in Israel, if a man went to inquire of God, he would say, "Come, let us go to the seer," because the prophet of today used to be called a seer. So that's a carryover for in my experience, is a very pagan way of looking at it. The witch doctor, the seer, the one who will read the tea leaves and shake the bones and that kind of thing. And so they're approaching finding these donkeys in a very irreverent kind of way. Now, if we could look at it as, in a sense of our own way, if we would fall upon our knees and pray to God, "Lord, I have a dog that I care very much about. And I know that many people are praying for all sorts of things, but I come before you and I ask you, help me find my dog that I care so much about." And I see nothing irreverent about that. The Lord cares for the very deep prayers that we pray, but God also prays for the very things, because the Lord desires, as a parent, we understand that, and as people who have people that we love, we understand that. We want the best for those people. And so this comes from the Lord. And so I don't see that as an irreverent prayer. But it seems that this way that they're going about, let's go see the seer, and we'll pay him some money, and maybe he'll tell us where our donkeys are. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem right. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that? Does it seem to you that Saul is coming at this situation of finding the donkeys probably the wrong way? Should he have known about Samuel? In my eyes, I think it would have been quite logical if someone who was of any sort of dutiful worship of the Lord, that the prophet of God would be on his radar. I have to wonder that.
How far away is Saul from where he is now? So if he was in, if I went to Tippecanoe County, I don't think I might know all the ministers there or the people of God.
Now that's a very good point.
But if it was here, around the different streets, I would know. So
that's actually a very good point. I would like to see a map of that and have an understanding of how geographically he's moved from, as we see he began in.
At least he was very willing to go and recognize.
Very true.
The same as us realizing. It seems.
So we're seeing two sides of the same coin there.
It seems to me like he actually wandered a long ways looking for two donkeys. It, to me, is the first of many indications that Saul's not the sharpest arrow in the quiver. If you're, how far do donkeys actually roam? And if you go,
very true, yeah.
I'm going to go to Rensselaer and look for my donkeys because they're started right here.
I've not had a lot of experience with donkeys, but something tells me that they're not going to go on some cross-country excursion. That they're going to go and they're going to find a nice piece of grass and a stretch of place, and they're going to stay there. There wasn't grass where they were, and they're going to continue until they reach grass. They're not going to go, I would really like to see the Grand Canyon. And they're not off to see the pyramids of Giza. They're looking for food. Very true.
Don't you wonder, my golly, how is he going to recognize that donkey from every other donkey that's in that whole area? There's donkeys all over.
There had to have been, right. I have to think of all the donkeys he had to have passed, because everyone has these beasts of burden there. Did they brand them like we do now? Did they tie did they have like stylish ribbons and necklaces on them? How did they? See that the questions that this draws are immense. How did he know? So, but at least I like that you brought up. It shows promise in him, and I think that is the character of Saul. We see a dichotomy. We see, wow, that was very laudable. That was very king-like, and then we see, this guy's a knucklehead. So,
very human.
Yeah, I think I like to see the humanity of David. Because there's something very redeemable. He sins greatly, but he repents greatly. He does despicable things, and I say I've done despicable things, but then he repents greatly, and that's who I want to be after God's own heart.
I think he's bipolar.
Yeah, and we don't know.
Betty's back.
There's not a diagnosis here that we can look at and say, look at the DSM-4 manual that they have. That's clinically bipolar.
We see him down the road.
Especially when he starts, spoiler alert, throwing spears. That to me always in Sunday school as I got older. Saul did what to David? He threw a spear at him. For what? Well, he was playing music. What? I've been to some bad concerts, but I would never want to throw a spear at somebody. We've digressed. So they decide, okay, and here I feel like we're consulting Samuel in sort of an unworthy manner, and perhaps not. Perhaps it's just, I think you really bring up a point I didn't think about. Perhaps he just is geographically far away. Maybe the word of Sam, they know of a man of God that is doing great things, and they're worshiping in their own way. I know that they would go and worship. They wouldn't go to a central location sometimes, because of the nature of things, and so they would worship the Lord in their own way. Maybe they haven't heard of it, but the servant has, and they have. We'll offer him a bit of a shekel of silver. Maybe he can assist us. Good, verse 10. Good. Saul said to his servant, "Come, let's go." So they set out for the town where the man of God was. As they were going up the hill to the town, they met some girls coming out to draw water, and they asked of them, "Is the seer here?" "He is," they answered. He's ahead of you. Hurry now. He has just come to our town today, for the people have a sacrifice at the high place. As soon as you enter the town, you'll find him before he goes up to the high place to eat. The people will not begin eating until he comes, because he must bless the sacrifice. Afterward, those who are invited will eat. Go up now, you will find him about this time. Indeed, this rings true. At potlucks, I enter and no one is eating because, hey, preacher, we're waiting on you to bless the food. So that's always nice. So they direct him where he needs to go. Samuel's traveling, it would seem, as we saw earlier. He kind of did a circuit to the different towns, ministering in that town. He's come back to this place, and how very fortunate that they found Samuel in this town. He's doing a sacrifice on the high place. The high place comes up a lot in the Old Testament as places of worship, both unto the Lord and in Samaritan worship, in Ammonite worship. They would use the high places in the worship of the Lord. It was so that people could see it. And in pagan worship, well, they thought it was closer to God. God was up here somewhere, and we are down here. And so we look at the Tower of Babel. Well, hey, we can make a tower unto the Lord, unto the heavens. So they, verse 14, they went up to the town, and as they were entering, there was Samuel, coming toward them on his way up to the high place. Now the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel. About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him leader over my people Israel. He will deliver my people from the hand of the Philistines. I have looked upon my people, for their cry has reached me. When Samuel caught sight of Saul, the Lord said to him, This is the man I spoke to you about. He will govern my people. Saul approached Samuel in the gateway and asked, Would you please tell me where the seer's house is? We see he doesn't know by sight Samuel. He doesn't know him by name. This is their first meeting. And Saul, verse 19, I am the seer, Samuel replied. Go up ahead of me to the high place, for today you are to eat with me. And in the morning I will let you go and will tell you all that is in your heart. As for the donkeys you lost 3 days ago, do not worry about them. They have been found. And to whom is all the desire of Israel turned, if not to you and all your father's family? So we know the donkeys were lost 3 days ago. And so if in the very day Father realized, I don't know where my donkeys are, and Saul set out, we know it's at least a 3-day journey from where they are to where they've ended up here in the area of Zuph, perhaps Ramah. So if it's kind of a serpentine journey, if he's looking for donkeys, it may be much closer. But if it was kind of a straight shot, well, then it's considerable. We can look at possibly up to, well, this is a big, strong, strapping guy, maybe 50 miles. I mean, if we're looking at 3 days, if from dawn to dusk, 20 miles a day.
Were they walking or riding?
That could change everything, wouldn't it? The donkeys are gone. What are they riding? If they have no donkeys, maybe a large goat. Camels. Yeah. I mean, it's just he's a head taller. It would have to be a very strong animal that would.
But God prepared all this. No
Very,
matter
yeah.
what we say, God prepared Samuel and
Yeah.
prepared Saul to
Yeah.
go that way and for them to meet. God works in
You
this
see
way.
those fingerprints all over of how, and even without the only thing to this point Saul has communicated to Samuel is, where's the seer's house? And from that he goes, okay, you're going to be king. By the way, those donkeys that you're going to ask me about, they've been found. There is this great, there's this fingerprints all over of how God has laid the foundation for this to occur. Even if it's kind of a backwards way about it, God had a plan and all that. God is still going to operate as God will always do. He's not going to just do something sort of halfway because it wasn't his plan. If he's going to do it, if he's going to visit something upon his people, it will be with excellence, the most excellent. And I think that's key in that as we look at this.
Isn't a seer like a fortune teller?
Right, and so it says
that Samuel was a seer.
he was in the parentheses in that little parenthetical note that we had in, well, not old times. How did they word that? Formerly in Israel, if a man went to inquire of God, he would say, "Come, let us go to the seer." I think that is a bringing in of a pagan word in kind of common wordage that did not apply in principle to Samuel. Samuel was in the office of prophet. He spoke for God to God's people. He was not in practice a seer, but because of what the people understood him to do, he communicated with the sky man that the pagans would do. Even though that wasn't quite what it was supposed to be, they just saw him as a seer, because other pagan nations that they wanted to be like, they wanted the king like the other pagan nations, they referred him as a seer. He was not a seer, and I'm sure Samuel got used to being called seer, because in a sense he would practice as a seer would do, but not to some Mr. Potato Head with fake eyes and fake ears. He would communicate with the one true God and present the word of the Lord to his people.
And the word made him look like some kind of an authority to the people.
That's right.
Today
Yeah.
it would be frowned on for us to go to a fortune teller.
It would. It would be very taboo for us to do that. Even with the great resurgence of the New Age principles and things like that. And I know a lot of people put a lot of stock in those sort of things, and it may be a very unpopular opinion, but I don't hold high opinions of crystals and zodiac and things like that. If I find out, well, by golly, you're a Taurus, I can't hang out with you. Well, then no, it will be because it's you make sweet tea poorly. That's a reason why I'll say I don't know if I want to come over and hang out with you. You don't make good sweet tea. Your coffee's weak. No, not that you're a Taurus. If you drive a Taurus, that's going to only make it. Those are great cars. Excellent choice in cars. So I think it's silly if we. If we hold that, and so I think we're applying modern day to this, and I have to wonder if he operated as a pagan seer. I imagine not, because every evidence that we have of Samuel, he's living according to how God would desire one in the office of prophet to be. He didn't bring shame to the prophet. Oh goodness, like Eli's sons, who were in the office of priest and just doing a terrible job. Even Samuel, his sons were not operating in the way that they should. And we see here prophets and priests coming in familial line. That's going to come into play. I just wanted to make a note that the father is operating in an office, his sons operate in that office. It's kind of a family business to come into that. But he acknowledges, I am the seer. That is true. Although I think it's only to acknowledge I'm the one you're looking for. Folks come into situations and I know what you mean, and so I'm not going to correct you because I have more important things to say. So he tells him this incredible sort of statement, gives him foresight into the donkeys, and he says, "You're going to eat with me at the high place." The priest, the prophet, was given a seat of honor at this because he was doing the sacrifice, and so there was a place and there were pieces that were granted to him in doing that. And he says, "You're going to sit with me. You're going to be a guest of honor. And tomorrow, I'm going to tell you all the stuff that's in your heart. I will tell you all that is in your heart." So verse 21, Saul answered, "But I'm not a Benjamin. But am I not a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why do you say such a thing to me?" Now, Saul may be this imposing specimen of a man and a mighty warrior and all that, but I think, as you pointed out, God uses everything that he does for a purpose. He found a man who would be everything the people were asking for. We want a king that is big and strong and looks like a king physically. but communicates even to us today that he is going to use the least to accomplish his purposes. He fulfilled what the people wanted, yet fulfilled in how God operates the least. He went to the least of the tribes of Israel, Benjamin. He went to the least of the clan, and he found one who would be lauded as king by the people of Israel. I think you're right. He's laying the foundation in everything. God lays that foundation in everything that he does. Everything that he does and everything that he operates through. It tells us about his character. Verse 22. Then Samuel brought Saul and his servant to the hall and seated them at the head of those who were invited, about 30 in number. Samuel said to the cook, "Bring the piece of meat I gave you, the one I told you to lay aside." So the cook took up the leg with what was on it and set it in front of Saul. Samuel said, "Here is what has been kept for you. Eat, because it was set aside for you for this occasion from the time I said, 'I have invited guests.'" And Saul dined with Samuel that day. Seat of honor, a fine choice piece of meat that was not chosen after meeting Saul. It was set aside the day before. For the feast, set this choice piece aside for the one I designate. God has laid this in the heart of Samuel to designate this man, Saul, from days before. Verse 25. After they came down from the high place to the town, Samuel talked with Saul on the roof of his house. They rose about daybreak, and Samuel called to Saul on the roof, "Get ready, and I will send you on your way." When Saul got ready, he and Samuel went outside together. As they were going down to the edge of the town, Samuel said to Saul, "Tell the servant to go on ahead of us." And the servant did so. "But you stay here a while, so that I may give you a message from God." Samuel has a message for him. He's not yet communicated the full breadth of what the Lord is planning for Saul. He's given him what Saul didn't realize was a coronation supper, a celebration of sorts. He's told him there is something yet to come, that God will use him and use his family, but not told him yet, which brings us to the beginning of chapter 10. Then Samuel took a flask of oil and poured it on Saul's head and kissed him, saying, "Has not the Lord anointed you leader over his inheritance? When you leave me today, you will meet 2 men near Rachel's tomb at Zelzah on the border of Benjamin. They will say to you, 'The donkeys you set out to look for have been found, and now your father has stopped thinking about them and is worried about you. He's asking, what shall I do about my son?'" Of course, when the same thing kind of happens to us as well. "Hey, where's Casey? Chloe, can you go find Casey? I think she's upstairs." And they run off, and then Chloe and Casey don't come back, and I have to send someone else. So I have to go up myself and say, where did, and I find them, wrapped up in a coloring book or watching TV or something. It's like, "I sent you up here to get your sister." "Oh, I'm sorry." And so the father, he sent his son out to find the donkeys, and has moved from, "I'm no longer worried about donkeys. I'm worried about my son. It's been many days, and he hasn't returned." And so Samuel says to him, "You're going to meet these folks at Zelzah, at Rachel's tomb, and they're going to tell this to you." Verse 3. "Then you'll go on from there until you reach the great tree of Tabor. 3 men going up to God at Bethel will meet you there. One will be carrying 3 young goats, another 3 loaves of bread, and another a skin of wine. They greet you and offer you 2 loaves of bread, which you will accept from them. After that you will go to Gibeah of God, where there is a Philistine outpost. As you approach the town, you will meet a procession of prophets coming down from the high place, with lyres and tambourines, flutes and harps being played before them, and they will be prophesying. The Spirit of the Lord will come upon you in prayer and power, and you will prophesy with them, and you will be changed into a different person. Once these signs are fulfilled, do whatever your hand finds to do, for God is with you. Go down ahead of me to Gilgal. I will surely come down to you to sacrifice burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, but you must wait 7 days until I come to you and tell you what you are to do." So Samuel gives these very precise directions with very precise pre-knowledge points the amount of the number of goats that will be with this person, the number of loaves of bread, and the number of loaves that will be offered, to further reassure and point out that God has given foreknowledge to Samuel, and to assure Saul that what is being laid upon him, this you will be leader, to affirm within him that it's not some crazed guy here and pouring oil on him and saying outrageous things, that he can be sure that this is of the Lord. There's a note that I read that I thought was interesting, that Samuel could have possibly set up schools to train prophets, and that this group of prophets we see in Gibeah, as you approach the town, you'll meet a procession of prophets coming down from the high place, that perhaps these are a group of prophets in training under the tutelage of Samuel and others. Just an interesting thought. So we see that Saul is to return home and that he will find these reassurances as he goes. Verse 9. As Saul turned to leave Samuel, God changed Saul's heart. And all these signs were fulfilled that day. When they arrived at Gibeah, a procession of prophets met him. The Spirit of God came upon him in power, and he joined in their prophesying. When all those who had formerly known him saw him prophesying with the prophets, they asked each other, "What is this that has happened to the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets?" So thoughts. When we see that Samuel first says you'll be a different person, and then we see it played out that Saul's heart was changed. Well, what was he before? Well, if he's a different person, what does that mean? What are your thoughts?
He was a soldier. He really didn't have the heart filled with God at that time. And God came along and changed his spirit so that he would be a more godly man for a while anyway.
That's a very good, because you have the mindset of a soldier. How they look at the world in one way, and then you have the mindset that you would expect of a king, not only a king but a king of Israel.
Doesn't that put you in mind of when Jesus went into his hometown to preach, and they said, "Who is that?" Well, that's
I love this.
And then
Yeah.
they're saying, "Well, who is Samuel? Why would he be that way?"
They've known Saul probably his whole life. They at least know enough of him, and they know about his father, and they ask, "Who's the father of Saul?" And it's who is this guy going about pretending to be, that he's prophesying? He's not a prophet. What is this? What's happened to the son of Kish? Verse 12, a man who lived there answered, "And who is their father?" So it became a saying, is Saul also among the prophets? After Saul stopped prophesying, he went into the high place. We see in the case of Eli, his sons followed. In the case of Samuel, his sons followed. So they, who's Saul's father? Certainly not a prophet. Why is Saul prophesying? There wasn't some special move. In the case of Samuel, there was this special move, and that interjected him into the temple to become what he is, and that people in a wide area knew about, came to see this bright young man that was doing good things for God. But I love that when he went into his own town, when those who knew him looked at him and said, "Well, you're not anybody special. What do you mean? You're just the son of Kish." What is, in Jesus' case, what is the son of a carpenter doing as a rabbi?
But they say in the Old Testament there's all kinds of reference to Jesus Christ in all kinds of ways,
Mm-hmm.
and that just popped in my head the way.
Right.
And until several years ago, I never thought that. And then, through teaching and so on and so forth, you say, "Oh, I guess that's right. There are lots of references," and
Some of them are more obvious than others. Some of
Yeah.
them are very small. How we see the mirroring. Sometimes we see in the life of Christ, we see the inverse. We see it. We see in the life of someone things go very poorly. Yet in a very sort of mirroring kind of way in the life of Christ, they go very much for the positive. I've heard Jesus referred to as the second Adam, in the same way that Adam, brought on the fall, so Christ brings in the redemption of all mankind. And so you see that through the Old Testament. You see either very, very much in the very mirroring, in this very same way we see those who are treated very poorly in their hometown when they are endeavored to serve unto the Lord. Saul is there. He's changed. He's prophesying, and they're laughing at him like, "Well, who's your dad? What are you doing, acting in such a way?" So, and after he stops prophesying, he went up to the high place. So, verse 14. Now Saul's uncle asked him and his servants, Where have you been?" "Well, looking for the donkeys," he said. "But when we saw they were not to be found, we went to Samuel." Saul's uncle said, "Tell me what Samuel said to you. There seems to be this, I know who Samuel is. What did he say to you? That's a big deal." Saul replied, "He assured us that the donkeys had been found, but he did not tell his uncle what Samuel had said about the kingship." Samuel summoned the people of Israel to the Lord at Mizpah and said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought Israel up out of Egypt, and I delivered you from the power of Egypt and all the kingdoms that oppressed you. But you have now rejected your God, who saves you out of all your calamities and distresses. And you have said, 'No, set a king over us.' So now present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and clans." When Samuel brought all the tribes of Israel near, the tribe of Benjamin was chosen. Then he brought forward the tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan, and Matri's clan was chosen. Finally, Saul, son of Kish, was chosen. But when they looked for him, he was not to be found. So they inquired further of the Lord, "Has the man come here yet?" And the Lord said, "Yes, he has hidden himself among the baggage." So I have to pause there. We have this using of I don't know if I'm going to pronounce right, umium and thermium, or which would be similar to dice. The casting of lots. The way that they did this to show that it is not from the intellect of a man, but that it is allowing the Lord to speak where all can clearly see. To kind of suss out who is going to be the next king, to show before everyone what the process was to find Saul as king. And so Benjamin is drawn, and they go through Benjamin clan by clan, and it's the clan of Matri, which is the clan that Kish is a part of, and so Kish is then drawn, and so of the children of Kish, Saul is drawn. And they say, okay, so it is Saul. Even though he's been anointed with a flask of oil by Samuel, they all can see clearly, indeed, it was this Saul who was chosen by God. Well, where is he? Bring out this new king. And they can't find him, so they ask, well, God, where is he? Well, he's hiding in the baggage. Everybody's come here, and they've got their baggage, and he's hiding in the baggage. 23. They ran and brought him out. They had to pull him out of the baggage. Brought him out, and as he stood among the people, he was a head taller than any of the others. Samuel said to all the people, "Do you see the man the Lord has chosen? There's no one like him among all the people." Then the people shouted, "Long live the king." Samuel explained to the people the regulations of the kingship. He wrote them down on a scroll and deposited it before the Lord. Then Samuel dismissed the people, each to his own home. So they had to go and find the king that played hide and seek. They had to find him. He's hiding, and so I have to. This is one of these things I have to ponder. Why did Saul hide?
Yeah.
Scared.
He didn't want to be king in the first place.
He didn't go seeking kingship. That's true.
Right.
What he was seeking was donkeys. His father said, "I've lost my donkeys." He said, "All right, Pops, I'll go look for them." And he wandered all over the place looking for donkeys. And so then he sought out Samuel, not to have Samuel anoint him as king, but do you happen to know where my father's donkeys are? So if there's a lesson in that somewhere, and that we may be out in the world searching for donkeys, and God has a big plan for us that we know nothing about.
Absolutely.
Our heads down here looking for donkeys, and that's a perfect position for the Lord to anoint it with oil. Now, if we go about continually looking for these donkeys, and rather than acknowledging the Lord's blessed me to do this, I should do this with all that I am. I'll be obedient to this. Or we could just keep our head down, keep looking for donkeys, and hide in the baggage. We have two paths to go.
But he's still going to find you and bring you out.
Right? Yeah.
That's
I
the
mean,
point.
you
You can't
in the
hide from
garden
God.
they were hiding,
Right.
and God found them.
Exactly.
When Saul is hiding in the baggage. Nobody can find me. Well, they asked God. God knew where you were. You're in the baggage. Go get him.
Yeah.
You wanted your king? Go dig your king out of the baggage.
I think it would have been pretty easy to find him because it says several times he was a head taller than everybody else
I
around.
have to imagine
So
they
I
had
guess-
this great pile of baggage, and there's the crown of his head sticking out. They're coming for me. I see them.
Is God trying to make somebody humble because of these donkeys? Does it have to do with humbleness or something like that?
I certainly see the connection in that. You know.
These donkeys, I mean, what are they trying to tell us? Searching for donkeys, is it the humbleness that he's trying to tell us to be humble, or what? What's the story about the donkeys? Why donkeys?
Yeah, because he could have been searching for anything, but I think it, you know, because if it was sheep, boy, there's a story there. How many times is God
Yeah,
referred to as
yeah.
the shepherd, and how we're supposed to do that? But donkeys are those that are they are a humble animal. They're stubborn. They're not the most intelligent, but when they are intelligent, it's very much to get under our own skin. You know, they're smart enough to find ways of not being hidden, not to be found by one who's big enough to see over everyone's head.
They were prized animals because they were beasts of burden.
They could do
Yeah.
very difficult work.
That's what my notes
Very
say,
strong.
that wealth was often tied to the number of donkeys you owned.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they were searching for him.
He was unwilling to let this symbol of wealth that he's invested in to just be gone.
I
He
think God
he
chose
Well, we
him.
have to go back with
It's just
Jesus.
for them to
He
be on the
had to go
road.
find a donkey to
Yes,
come
for him
into
to
town,
come
so
to
there's
town.
another
There
donkey
we
that
are.
we, again,
in
never think
order
about. Why
in
is this?
order for him to make that triumphal entry,
Yeah.
he sent his
Yes.
disciples,
On the
"Bring
donkey.
me a donkey."
There's another donkey there.
And they had to bring the mother along with it because it had never been written. Some have said, well, did Jesus ride on both? No, he called for the colt and the mom and the child. It had never been written, and so he rode one that had never been written first to ride it. They had to bring along the mother to make it feel comfortable. But donkeys, again, we see donkeys. We have to question that. We have to wonder what is God communicating in all of this. So we have, where did we leave off at? We have the scroll. Now I didn't really make any Samuel explained what kingship was. This is the first king, the first monarchy the people of Israel have had, and so it makes perfect sense that he would write, this is what a king is supposed to do. But that's just the thing. Apparently, it is the king that is supposed to write that out. In as far as if we look through, I think it's in Deuteronomy. It is the king that is supposed to write the scroll out and place it before the Lord. But it is Samuel who did it. We have Saul just kind of standing there, kind of like a lump, and Samuel's having to do everything. And so it was Samuel who deposited it before the Lord. I wonder if this was in the notes that I have here or in my commentary that I read through. But it was not supposed to be. It was supposed to be the king designate who wrote that scroll out as to what his kingship would be, and place it before the Lord. And that legal document was to not only be a secular governing, but also a part of God's covenant in his kingship. This monarchy was also a theocracy. It was not just I am in charge of the people as a earthly government, but I am doing so in concert and with the blessing of God. This is the people of Israel. This is not some secular group of people. This isn't the Rotary Club, and I'm the president. It is the people of God, and I am the king over that. It is a governing and a religious tied role to be played. And so if that king was incompatible with that, he could not be king. And this was laid out in what God told his people long before they came to the time to have a king. Verse 26, Saul also went to his home in Gibeah, accompanied by valiant men, whose heart God had touched. But some troublemakers said, "How can this fellow save us?" They despised him and brought him no gifts, but Saul kept silent. Again, we have the folks that just aren't going to be happy. They're gonna find something to complain about, and it's not of it. Sometimes you'll have the concerns brought up, and you're like, "That's a good concern. Let's address that. Let's see if that's of weight." And then we have people that are just saying things like, "Well, how can this fellow save us?" Well, you cried out for a king, and God gave you the king that you asked for, and they're not happy. But Saul kept silent. Okay, there we have Saul doing something. Okay, that's laudable. And if we're looking at images of what is to come with Christ, it was, again, we have Jesus in a place where he had full rights to say something, call angels down upon those at his trial, but he kept silent. Perhaps, if anything, we can see the power that is in silence. Times when we want to say something, but don't. And that we speak far more in that silence than we do with anything we could say. There is something to be said there. Where are we on?
Time. Yeah.
Oh, we are right. No, I don't want to jump into chapter 11 just yet, because that there's a whole nother pile of things that we want to be able to talk about in that. So what we'll do is we'll end here, and we'll pick up with chapter 11 next week. Let's close in prayer.
Benji,
Yes.
just want a little thing
Sure.
from the Daily Walk, and this was the Daily Walk from March of 1991. Before following a leader, it is wise to see if he is headed in the right direction.
Before following a leader, I want everyone to hear that. Before following a leader, one must make sure he's heading in the right direction.
Yes.
I think that's an incredible word, and I'm glad you hung on to that, because that's one we need to hear. Because we're all following somebody. Have we made sure they're going in the right direction?
Now, there were those people there that were saying, "How come we're following this guy? We're going with him on what his program."
And I decried their, but here we are. No,
Yes.
I think they had a lot more. There's just so much to be gleaned from this.
Yes.
That there's two sides to every coin. Perhaps they were asking the right questions here.
Back to your Sunday sermon again. Good
There,
sermon.
I gotta go. There it is. All right, let's close. Lord, we thank you this morning that you, even after all the time we might spend in your word, you open it up. Each time we come to it, we find something more and incredible and inspirational that takes root within us, Lord. We thank you that you are far greater than we can even understand. We thank you that you've offered us this word from you that guides us and directs us and inspires us and encourages us and reproves us and refines us. Help us in our study of it to be more like you, to follow in your ways, to walk in the path that you have laid out before us, for we know the foundation that we are to walk. Help us to remain faithful in that walk. Help us to not grow weary in our journey to follow after our Savior Jesus Christ. For it indeed is in his name that we pray. Amen.
Good class today. Good class.